Great. Okay. So welcome everybody. This is the UX UI Design Demystified event. I'm really excited to have our three panelists here. We have about 9 questions, and hopefully we may have some time at the end if folks want to ask questions of their own. You are also welcome to post questions in the chat, and I will try and integrate them in. Our panelists are from different spaces, so this is going to be really exciting because you're going to get some perspectives that you may have otherwise not heard from. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you all to introduce yourselves, and then we'll hop into some questions.
Sure, I can go first. Hi, everybody. I'm Sonali, and I'm currently a lead digital product designer at Nike, and I work on building like complex internal software with my team, and I'm really lucky to get to work with Maria. It's yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, so I also work at Nike, obviously, with Sonali. My role is lead UX researcher. So I'm in charge of like talking to the humans who will use our products and making sure that I give Sonali enough information so that she can design the best solution possible for them.
Yeah, and Deborah, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Deborah. I'm a UX designer, so you're a user experience designer. And I am currently working at CDK Global, so not at Nike, working on automotive industry kind of software. And I'm here today because Sonali and I used to work together where we worked in the designing for legal space. And so lots of fun stuff. And I kind of wish I had a researcher too, by the way. I do a little bit of both in my day-to-day right now. So
Awesome. I'm just pulling up the questions.
Yeah, they're in the chat, everybody. I believe when you enter a Zoom, it may not show you the chat right away. So let me see if I'm gonna repost them so it's there for everybody who just joined us.
Awesome, I've got them.
Great.
Cool. Okay. Do we just want to start going down the list?
Yeah. So the first one that was posted was, when did you realize UX or UI design was an industry you were interested in?
Deborah, do you want to start since we can go the other way?
yeah, that sounds good. So to give a little bit of background, I was in touch with UX since I was in college. And in particular, we had a program related to our cognitive science department, which is pretty similar to psychology in a way, where we focused on human-computer interaction. And so, to be honest, I didn't know that I was interested in design right away. I started off with a few computer science classes, and then kind of along the way, I realized that, it's fun to code some of the things that, make a app or a desktop app work. But at the same time, I was so obsessed with like, oh my God, I can't believe this button just doesn't look right for some reason. And so that's kind of where it led me to be more like, oh, well, I wonder if there's like an avenue for design and that would help me go towards the route that I like. And so that's kind of how I just fell into that hole.
That's awesome. I can tell my story. So I realized that I was interested in user experience in a very like particular way that had nothing to do with what I do today in terms of technology, because I feel like sometimes user experience sounds like if it was only applied to technology, but in my case, how I started being interested in it has nothing to do with technology. Me and some friends were kind of contacted to do like I guess like a nonprofit project for a community center in a very, very kind of far away town in Colombia, where I'm from. And so they called me and they were like, hey, I was studying design, and they were like, hey, would you like to come? And like, there were some architects, anthropologists, and then like some designers, and we were all going to like make this community center, kind of build this community center and make it better. So we started going there and having like some meetings with them. And I always saw how the anthropologists manage the conversation, talk to the people, like trying to understand what was it that made the community center like valuable to them, so that we could apply all of that information into what we were going to build. So that was like my first time understanding that in order for you to design something for people, like you have to make a good user experience, even if it's like in a physical space, like a community center. Kind of the research part and the anthropology part is really important. So that's when I first understood that.
Awesome. My story is I was studying advertising, and so came from a very like campaign heavy background where you work on something for a short period of time and you just get it to launch and then you launch it. And my very first thought around that was, well, why do you just hand it off and stop looking at it and stop working on it? That drove me nuts. And I was at the time taking a class on how to use Adobe XD, and it was like right when it had come out. And the school that I went to the University of Oregon. The school that I went to was partnered with Adobe. So there was a lot of push for Adobe products and learning how to use them. And I just started exploring like digital publications. Yes, go Ducks. Learning about digital publication and how you could make something interactive was very interesting to me. I was getting ready to graduate from university and realized I wanted to pursue this more, but I didn't really know where to do that. So I ended up pursuing a master's in communication design, and that really helped me feel more prepared and more ready to go into the field. And during that program, I learned a ton about user experience and how to design communication effectively, and really look at user experience, whether it's, to Maria's point, involved with technology or sitting outside of what we traditionally think of as like user experience work. I think my favorite projects have to do with getting you outside of the technology space and looking at services, or looking at basically ways that you can help people's lives improve regardless of the technology. But yeah, that's my story.
Thank you all. So what options are there for advancement in your roles?
I guess, can we expand on the question a little bit more? Because I could take that a couple different ways.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, like, is the industry set up to where like you're in a role for like a couple of years and then you move on to the next step? Like, is it really hierarchical, or are you really like having to, is it a challenge to move up to the next step, whatever that is? Do you feel like you might be pigeonholed into like one job?
I get the question. Okay, yeah. UX, I think, can apply to a variety of different fields. Like, you could be in pretty much anything. Like, Deborah and I obviously started working in like legal tech, and that's very, very, very different than like working for Nike or working for an agency or working for a nonprofit organization. Like, it's broad. It's exceptionally broad. I think it's one of the broadest fields that you can go into, honestly. And it doesn't require you to code necessarily. So that's one of the things that you can also get out of it. I would say that the maturity at each of those organizations for understanding what user experience is really where the wild card kind of comes into play. You may or may not be in an organization that understands the purpose and value of having you there, and you may be asked to do things that don't necessarily fall into your role. So really understanding what the job is important for making critical decisions. And you're not just making them for you, you're making them to advocate for your users. And I think the user advocacy is the number one piece. Like, when I'm telling people about user experience, it's always user advocacy is like the number one thing you have to consider. Yeah, go ahead, either of you.
I think, I mean, one thing that I completely agree with what Sonali said. I think basically it depends a lot on like what company or like industry you're in. I think the advancement also requires a lot of kind of evangelization from our part to like let others know what it is that we can do and how can we support the organization and what value we can bring. I mean, there's a lot of people who have come before us who have already like built, kind of like paved this path a little bit. But I feel like in a lot of the organizations that I've worked in, I've had to like argument the importance of my role. But I think, I mean, that's hard, but having said that, I think that once people realize how important it is to do good UX design and research, they understand, like it's kind of liberating because they trust, like you kind of have to become an expert before them and kind of pave the way as well. So I think it's getting better. And I think the advancement, like as Sonali said, like advancement is huge because you can work anywhere and do anything basically, from, you know, healthcare to finance to NGOs. Yeah.
To advertise, I mean, advertising agencies are also expanding that. I was also gonna say you can also choose to like go the design path of like becoming a junior designer, then a designer, then a senior designer, and so on and so forth until you're like a principal designer and you're really making decisions about the design work. Or you can choose to lean more into like the design ops space and look at operations and how you basically how the team is structured. And also you can choose to do more of the people management part. So there's a lot of flexibility in the direction that you choose to take your career. Deborah, what about you?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with both of your points. There's a lot of different fields that UX can apply to, and specifically within each company, I think you are your own biggest advocate. So if you decide that, so UX itself can encompass many aspects. People talk about product design, people talk about user interface design, as well as research that falls under the similar umbrella. So if you find that you have a passion for doing research, you can definitely feel comfortable about letting your managers know or letting, you know, your friends and teammates know that research is something that you would like to pursue, and then you can go towards that route. And so like Sonali said, you can go towards being a senior designer if you wanted to, but you can also have the path of doing like a researcher role. So there's a lot of advancements in general for UX.
Thank you. It looks like Narissa put, have you had to speak about your training, undergrad experience, and other things to advocate for the importance of your role?
Every day, for sure. Like this is definitely something that you talk about a lot. You're always, you know, to Maria's point, you're evangelizing. So you're really digging deep and sharing out in strategic ways the work that you're doing and why it's valuable to the organization. And there's this continuous justification process that is also built into the UX practice, and how, you know, how you basically use scientific findings to justify advancement is continuous. And specifically leaning into your training to advocate for the importance of your role, I would say that you can come from a variety of backgrounds. So you don't necessarily have to, and this kind of gets into the next question a little bit, but like, you don't have to necessarily like, if you studied anthropology, that's great. If you studied engineering, that's great. If you studied sociology, that's great. Like there are loads of people that come from different backgrounds and end up in UX. There are people who start out in product management or engineering or literature. Like literature is a super popular one for UX copywriting, which is literally writing, you know, copy that targets users and is built for users to understand, for a specific user group to understand. So there are a ton of like niche fields within that you can really dig into. And it's not necessarily limited by having like a specific UX certificate. Like the field is so new that it's really hard to say any one piece of paper is really going to give you the experience and the knowledge that you need to be able to enter the field.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think just the advocating for my role in particular has been like also kind of like,
Sorry.
let's try this out and trust me and let's see what happens, you know? That's kind of like how it looks like. It's like just go with me for this like little idea that I have, and let's figure it out together. And usually when they see the results of like how things are different when you actually do research and do UX research, that kind of convinces people.
Yeah.
Yeah, UX is a field that definitely benefits from having people of different backgrounds. And it's something that you shouldn't feel like locked into if you don't have that UX undergrad training, because it's always something that you can pick up. It's something that your different kind of perspective can bring into the field. And I think the importance of advocating your role, I mean, I think we end up doing that a lot at a lot of places if you hear other UX designers talk. From what I've learned, one of the most important parts is to actually build a relationship with the people that I want to talk to, because it gives me an in and a way for them to really understand, oh, like what is UX thinking about and why is that important? What led them to make this type of decision? And so a lot of the advocating is just being able to communicate your thoughts in a clear way, why it's important to UX and why it would be important to the team and the business.
And then Jesse asked, what kind of softwares and technical tools do you use day to day in UX?
That's a really great question. So I'm gonna kind of turn the question on its head a little bit. Your best friend is a piece of paper and a pen. That is your best friend. Make sure you get some Post-its. You can't go wrong, right? There are a ton of tools and they're always trending and they're always changing. So, you know, when the fields, there's Acture and there's Figma and there's XD and there's Sketch. Like Sketch was super popular 5 years ago when I started my career, and now like so many places are using Figma instead because we're in a remote world. But I fully anticipate that will change again and again and again over the course of my career. I would say understanding the purpose of the things that you're doing and the work that you're executing is far more important than like a piece of software. And knowing a certain piece of software is not going to gatekeep a job from you. So like learning Figma is cool. Do it if that's what you want to spend time on. But I would strongly recommend that if you have to choose between the two, focus on the process and the actual execution and the deliverables over a piece of software. Do y'all have a different opinion? Because I came in hot.
That was great advice.
Yeah, totally. I mean, before moving to the US and like working in all these like tools and stuff, I literally just use Post-its and like notebooks to like take notes and stuff. There's like a million tools nowadays that help you do that better. That's arguably, I don't know if it's better, but like just do it in a more like connected way that other people can have access to it, not just like trying to figure out your handwriting on a Post-it. But really the point is it's the same thing, you know, these softwares are trying to imitate like reality. Like Miro is a tool that we use a lot. I mean, I use a lot. I'm pretty intense with my Miro's boards.
Same here. Yep.
And it's just like imitating real life, you know, it's like Post-its, and then like basically you can write, and then you can have like papers, you know, it's just technology for like real life, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say about like softwares and tools, I think a good parallel is when you think about going to school for art and drawing, learning the technique first and understanding how the technique functions and its purpose is more important than understanding how to draw an orange specifically. Like that's kind of the way that I think about it, is like understanding how to shade things is more important than learning to draw a specific thing.
Yeah, I think this touches on like a great point, because once you have the fundamentals down, you essentially can learn to do it in any tool. And that's pretty much, an expectation of everybody who I think works in tech, because we're always changing our tools. The software engineers are always learning some type of new coding language. There's always going to be some kind of advancement. So in the event that this is a question targeted at what tools you should learn to put on your resume, I think knowing one tool really well is going to bring you further along than just saying like, I know Sketch, Axure, Figma, and then having all of those on there. I think at this point, if you can show what you can do, it's a lot more valuable than trying to catch up to all the tools that are available out in the market.
That's great. We have another question. Why make a list when they all have such great questions? So Lily is currently in and completing Design Lab's UX Academy and wants to know, what boards do you recommend for entry-level UX positions, and or are there apprenticeships you would recommend?
Yeah, I have a couple. Thank you, Maria. So on top, I have a lot of jobs. I think I have 4 right now. And I know it's a little chaotic in my life right now. But the internship, so is a agency where we hire junior talent. So you come in and you work on real clients and you get paid for that work. And we do some training with you, and you get access to the network of other interns and alumni. And our leadership team is at Google, Nike, Columbia Sportswear, Salesforce, and a couple other places. So we try to bring some of that experience to you. So yeah, that's my little plug for the internship, but it's definitely not right for everybody. I would strongly recommend checking out the We Are Next job board. That's also built specifically for junior talent. If you belong to the BIPOC community, looking at HUE, HUE, I think their website is wearehue.org. They are a great resource for jobs in general for people of color. Trying to think of a couple more. They'll come to me. I'll post them in the chat. What about y'all? Any other thoughts?
I think one advice that I think is, well, first, join the internship. It's really cool. Second, really just like, I mean, I'm an amazing stalker. Like, I'll just stalk people on LinkedIn all day and try to like figure out what their careers look like, and if it's something that I like. And then just like, I feel like most of the jobs that I've gotten have been through like networking and stuff like that. So like when you see those people that have interesting careers that kind of inspire you, or that seems like something that you would like to do, like I'm sure that like reaching out, like 90% of people like love talking about themselves. So like if you reach out and you're like, hey, I'm interested in your like career, and like understanding your career path and stuff, I'm sure that most of them will be like, sure, I'll have a conversation with you, and then like they just keep you like top of mind whenever they know about a job or something. So that's, I mean, besides job boards, that's my advice.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say to answer question number 3, because we're kind of in that space anyway, is the question was, how do students from liberal arts backgrounds compete against other students from schools with programs more specific to UX UI design? I'm going to offer some advice and also offer a path forward. So piece of advice is UX UI certificates, like you want to be really critical of the program that you're entering. And if that's something that you choose to do, I don't think that is necessarily like the thing that'll get you into the industry. I know so many people, and I've mentored so many people who have done a certificate and really not gotten out of it what they needed to be able to join the industry. A lot of certificate programs are typically designed to give you what I consider like shallow knowledge about the industry, and it doesn't really touch on user advocacy and ethics in the way that it needs to. It's very much about execution of like, how do you execute a prototype? And while that's important information, it doesn't necessarily impress upon students and people getting ready to join the industry of, again, that user advocacy piece and how important it is to evangelize your work and strategies to do that. So I think that that's often left out of the conversation around how to join the industry. The thing that I would recommend if you're like, I know zero about this industry and like, I really want to pursue UX, but I need to get some like bare bones functional knowledge. The place I always recommend for people is the Interaction Design Foundation. And the reason that I recommend it is it's like $200 a year, and you can go on and get as many certificates as you want. And it is basically the guy who founded the term UX, Don Norman, is on the board of that organization. So there's a fair amount of oversight. And it's just really accessible. And you also, like, as a member, you get to attend webinars for like $3 instead of $30 per each webinar. So there are a lot of good things that can come out of that organization. But again, my biggest recommendation is like, be critical of whatever you're entering and make sure it's going to serve your needs. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about that?
I was like, you got that one in the bag.
Oh, Design Buddies sounds cool too. I haven't heard of that one. Yeah.
Should we move on to the next question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, spill the tea. Is the pay competitive?
Totally depends.
Agreed.
Totally depends on the city that you're in, the state of the job market, your experience level, and like what industry you're going into. I can't remember if I said that first.
No,
but yeah,
I think you covered it.
but yeah. So like, you know, if you get to a point where you decide you want to work for a really big organization, like let's say you want to work for like a Facebook or something, you're gonna get paid well, but you're going to be pretty limited in what you do. Like, you may not even just do user research. You may just write surveys, and that is all you do, right? If you're at a smaller agency and organization, you may end up with less pay. It's still reasonable. Like, it's, you know, it's still, you know, at least for the most part, it's somewhat reasonable. But you're going to have a lot more autonomy and choice around how you do your work. Yeah, anybody else have different thoughts on that? Maria, you're muted.
I'm like inspired here talking to the air. So I think it depends on what you compare it to, right? I feel like doing UX design work is tough. You know, it's similar to like doing, you know, engineering work where you need a lot of heads down time to like do your shit, your like stuff. And then if you compare like the salary of like a UX designer with like a senior UX designer with a senior engineer, I'm pretty sure that it's gonna be higher for the engineer, even though the work is like, I wouldn't say that much different. Like, I mean, the workload is not that much different, but I mean, I think it's just way more cool to like do UX research and like talk to humans than just like be coding all day. So that's just my opinion.
We're definitely a little cooler in that. So with the pay, I think it is really important, Sonali touched on it, is that you have to base it on especially like location and kind of the maturity of the company. So you know, if you're thinking Bay Area, Silicon Valley, all the designers have six-figure salaries, but in reality, you know, a lot of the designers do work for really big companies that have the ability to pay their designers six figures. So if you're finding yourself, you have you know, like a high 5-figure salary and you're like, oh, is that like too low? You really have to kind of gauge what it is like within the market and the city that you're at. It is an achievable dream that you should definitely advocate for, but it's also really dependent on the company you choose.
I also just want to call out inflation. Like inflation is something to consider when you're looking at salaries and what you need. Yeah, Maria, Glassdoor is great. There's also Naya, I will send it to you if I can find it. It's this like, it's a Google form, and UX designers plug in what they're making at different companies and different locations. And so it's a salary transparency tool, and it's worldwide. Like you can see like a ton of stuff. You can see what benefits are included, and it's just like this random Google spreadsheet. You can fill out the form and add your stuff, and then it's just in there. And it's anonymous, so like you don't have to like share your name or anything, but it is a great tool to see what other people are making around the world and create some advocacy, you know, data points for yourself.
I've seen a couple of those sorts of forms in tech, especially that have like floated around LinkedIn, and I think it's just a cool thing that needs to happen more often.
Yeah, we had someone come to the internship who just talked about salaries. Like she shared like all of her salaries going through like from when she started to where she is now. And it was great. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool thing. I'm all for like salary transparency for sure.
Yeah. We have a question, and this probably was something we should have mentioned earlier, but this student wants to know, for someone who has no prior experience with UI, UX design, can you describe what it is and how they differ? And like, what are the pros and cons of your industry? I think is maybe what they meant.
Okay. Yeah. User experience design. Well, let's start with user experience research. So like, Maria, do you want to define user experience research?
So user experience research is like, this is gonna sound so stupid, researching the kind of needs and motivations of users who will either use a specific tool or live a specific experience within something that you've designed, so that you can have all of the data points to better design that experience. So it's basically just talking to people and figuring out what they want in life, and then just kind of putting that together into something that is actionable that you can, you know, like build something from.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think a good way to, I don't know, there's an ice cream analogy that is still, it's shaky, but it's good. You know, if you are starting an ice cream company, right? You first want to find out like what is the like niche area that you can fill, right? So like you go out and you talk to people and you say, what do you like about the current ice cream offerings, and what do you not like, and why don't you like it? And really understand how you could kind of fill that void with whatever it is you're offering. You then discover that people's favorite ice creams are like chocolate. I'm just gonna make stuff up, but like chocolate and vanilla and strawberry in that order, right? So you as a user experience designer, you might come through and be like, okay, well, to help this company successfully launch, we want to make sure that on the website, we really showcase the ice creams in that order. Like we're going to launch with chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And we're going to make sure that the website really showcases chocolate and then vanilla and then strawberry. And then we're also going to have a section on the website that's like future ice creams to come. Like, let's just say like butter pecan, because that's the one that popped into my mind first. And then the UI designer would then be responsible for designing the UI for the website. So they're saying like, okay, I really want to make sure that the hero image showcases chocolate ice cream, and I'm going to hire maybe a visual designer to do some really great illustrations of chocolate ice cream, or I, as the UI designer, might do that. I then might want the experience, you know, I'd work really closely with the user experience designer to say like, okay, you'll scroll down the page a little bit, and then there will be this other chunk of information and I want it to look this way. I want a green button. And when you hover on the green button, it's going to change to orange or something. Those are the kinds of decisions a UI designer is making. A UX designer is really thinking about the structure and the process and the experience that a person goes through. Yeah, hopefully that analogy made sense.
Yeah, I think in short, there is a lot of overlap between them. When someone mentions UX designer to me, you know, you can be a visual designer who only does visual things, placing things on a page, designing how a box looks. There's also people like Sonali said, UX designers who work on the overall experience of how this product may turn out to be. There's even more nitty gritty stuff. There's like visual ones, interaction designers, and then going into research, there's also different types depending on what kind of research you do. And there's even product designers who are part of the whole entire process from planning the feature all the way to the end and designing it and doing all of that. So the way I kind of end up defining it is I find somewhere where I think I can make an impact and where I feel passion for, and I kind of hone in on that skill specifically without worrying about the title per se.
That's so much clearer than mine. I
like the ice creams.
I was also gonna say, like, first of all, I think it's great. Whoever asked that question, amazing job distinguishing UX and UI. I think there's a lot of I guess there's a lot of media attention around like them kind of being one thing and they get muddy. But I also just want to call out that this field has only been around for like 20 or 30 years. It is still muddy. And that's why we all have different kind of definitions and nuances and how all of that fits together. If you do go through an interview phase, you want to ask an organization and really dig in deep to like what UX means to them and does that align with what you want to do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you all maybe touched on this, but like, how is UX UI design?
I can hear this.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm being shushed. How is it being designed to and applied to spaces for like social good if students aren't interested in working in like a corporate or for-profit space?
I want to answer that one. I recently you guys should check out Code for America. It's a nonprofit organization that does like, they're really focused on UX research and UX experience and service design, you know, not only in the tech space, but also like how can we improve access to the tools that, you know, the government provides for people and just make them easier to use, because obviously the government doesn't like design them in the best way possible because they don't have the time for it or whatever the understanding, and this company like really helps improve that experience for users. So I definitely recommend that. I mean, my first jobs I worked in the social sector before working in finance, which is insane, like the two extremes. And there's a lot of organizations that use design and, you know, UX, design thinking, and all of these things to like make a difference in the world. So definitely they're out there. I can think of way more back home where I live, so that doesn't really help. Or not where I live in Portland, but like where I was born. But check out Code for America. And there's like, as we said at the beginning, like there's UX can be applied to like literally any industry, including the social and nonprofit part of, yeah. So.
I mean, I think it's a great calling to have and be able to dedicate your time and energy to it. I think things to be aware of, like, since we have had discussions about pay, is like usually if you're in the nonprofit space, your pay is going to be less, but you're going to be doing something you love. So who cares really? The other thing I'll just say about nonprofit work is it is sometimes slower. Like, and that can be a really great thing if you're in the research space. because then you have all of this amazing time to talk to people. Maybe not. It's like, but I would just say, like, keeping those things in mind. If you're someone who really likes a fast-paced environment, nonprofit work may not be the best space for you.
I think you both got it covered for this one.
Awesome.
I'm gonna slot in a question around, so like, can any of you talk about like what the interview application process might look like on the back end, and like what, especially like graduating seniors and like, students stepping into their first full-time role may want to anticipate and prepare for?
Yeah, it's a great question. My big thing whenever I'm interviewing people is, how well did they take feedback? How can you talk about your mistakes, and can you talk about a time that you had to accept feedback? Those are two big questions and things that I think are, really applicable to any field, but I feel like in user experience, it is a really, really important piece, because our goal is to be iterative. And also self-awareness is just important for life. Maria, any other thoughts on, like, I don't know, I'm specifically thinking about like our Nike.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk a little bit about like how it usually looks like you will probably, talk to, like, have a screening with a recruiter that doesn't know absolutely anything about what you're gonna do. They're just gonna ask you like random questions about like stuff that they have to ask, like a script sort of thing. Then you'll probably like meet with a hiring manager or someone who is close to the team who can like evaluate if you will be a right fit, not only of like in terms of like the knowledge that you have, like, because when they're hiring people, they probably have like gaps in knowledge or needs and specific needs. So they'll evaluate that, but also evaluate if you will fit in the team in terms of like personality and all of these things. Your ability to take feedback and all of that. And then they might have you either discuss your portfolio, like whatever you've done, and then maybe like do some exercise. Some companies require you to do like some sort of exercise. Some don't, but I mean, that happens sometimes. And then like explain it. And I think that's pretty much it. They probably will make you meet with like other people that you're going to work cross-functionally with, to see like how it works and how that works. And then, I mean, one thing that I always tell people who are interviewing, and I keep in mind whenever I am interviewing, is first, like, never stop interviewing. Even if you have a job, like, it's good to like keep doing that, because it helps you like, be on point, see what else is out there, like, understand how more competitive your salary could be. And then the second thing is like, remember that when you're in an interview process, you're also interviewing them to like figure out if that's a place where you fit in and that you will be happy. Like, we spend, I don't know, 40 hours at least of our week, dealing with work and being in work. Like, it should be a place where you're happy and you feel like you fit in. And not every UX role is created equal. So for sure, go out and interview the teams as well, so that you can figure out if you like the job or not.
Exactly. And I think added on top of that, what I like to do, I'm sure all of you do that too, but prepare like a list of questions that you feel like you would want to ask whoever is interviewing you. So most of the time, you will probably interview with your manager, the person who will be your manager. And then you'll also interview with people that could possibly be your teammates that you will have to spend all this time with. And then in addition, sometimes you might get different stakeholders within your interview. So these could be engineering developers that you work with, or product management people that you will also work with on your day-to-day. And so it's really important to, like Maria said, interview them while they're interviewing you. If they ask you a question, feel free to also ask a question back. And sometimes it really is just down to whether or not you feel the team would be a good fit for you, and whether or not you would be a good fit for them.
I was going to add on to that and just say a few things that I see from like junior designers who I interview who don't feel ready are people who, when they're walking me through their process, are literally just walking me through the design thinking process. And they're not really digging into how the project was unique, how they are unique, how their thinking really illustrates why they were a good fit for the project in the first place. So making sure that you're spending some time practicing walking through your portfolio pieces, and do it with people who don't know anything about your work. Like, do it with people who you really have to dig in and explain it to. People who are easily bored are also a good option for this, because you have to keep them engaged. I was also going to say, I think when we interviewed juniors, and something else that I notice is there's a lot of emphasis on like the visual design aspect of it. And it's really important for us when we're in an interview. We want to understand how you think and how you're going to contribute to the curiosity of the team. Come curious for sure to your interviews. Make sure you have those questions like Deborah talked about. And then also just like send a thank you note. Like, even if it's just going to the recruiter, be sure to send a thank you note. It really, like, even if you're like, oh, wow, that really didn't go the way I was expecting it to, sending a thank you note is usually, it'll usually help save you a little bit, and keep you at top of mind. Yeah.
A few of you mentioned portfolio. Could you elaborate on what is in the portfolio?
Yes.
I have a great tool for building your portfolio. I think it's called UXfolio or something like that. The reason why I like it is because you literally don't have to think. Like, the thing is gonna ask you all the right questions. It's gonna like kind of guide you through like what you should have in the portfolio. I think it's $100 a year or something like that. And then they help you like build your portfolio using that. That's like one of the tools that I recommend. Basically, you need to have, I mean, you don't have to have a lot of projects, like maybe 3, or that's about it. Like 3 to 5.
Yeah, you don't want
I
to.
feel like 5 could be too much, right?
Yeah.
A little much, yeah.
Maybe 3, just, yeah. And then, you know, you have to kind of have, what is the, like, what was the kind of challenge that you were kind of, you know, what's the, how do you say that? Like the question, like the hypothesis, like, well, what
Basically,
made
yeah,
you,
what was the core challenge, and how did you overcome it, essentially?
exactly. And then you just show your process and like the steps you took and explanations. I mean, UXfolio just is gonna walk you through it. It's really good. I'm not very good at answering that right now because I can't think what my projects have, but check out UXfolio, they'll help you out.
Yeah, I was gonna say a portfolio in general is like a website. It's a digital space. Sometimes it's a presentation deck. Like, I've seen that leveraged really well as well. But essentially what you want to include in it is case studies of your work. So what Maria was talking about with like the challenge and the solution, you want to include visuals in that. So when you're going through a project, making sure you're taking a ton of photos of you working on it. Like, you can literally ask friends to take photos of you. You want to take pictures of the work itself. So if you draw a sketch, just take a picture of it and throw it in a folder on your computer for later. I've also seen people like write weekly blogs on their work, so that they're documenting it. But essentially, you just want to document your process in some way. And then the other piece that you usually see in a portfolio is an about me section. And it's talking about who you are and what you care about. And it's just really telling people who you are. So it's pretty straightforward to have a portfolio, but that's a good question. And Deborah, did I miss anything?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything. And I think with the portfolio, it's something that my recruiters ended up looking at more than my resume, because it told them a little bit more about how I am as a designer. And they were able to see, like, how does Deborah think? How does she approach this project? And, you know, I think UXfolio is like I just like went to the website and I was like, oh, this is like really great. Wish I had this. But pretty much just being able to, I think in a nutshell, what your project was like and how you handled it from start to finish.
And quick time check. We have like 7 minutes left, so maybe time for like 1 or 2 more questions. But Lily wants to know, are you working from home, and how do you create a division between workspace and living space and time management?
That's a great question. I mean, so Nike right now, we're remote. However, we're getting ready to go back into the office on a hybrid model. So we will be back in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we will be you can choose to be at home or in the office Monday and Friday. And I personally have been working remote for a while. I started working partly remote when Deborah and I were in legal tech. And then the agency I moved to after that was actually in the process of moving to remote when I joined them in like 2019. So I've been remote for most of my career, and it works really well for me. I can make sure the laundry gets done and the dishes get done and all those kinds of good things. I would say it is harder to walk away from the computer sometimes, but I think allowing yourself, basically creating like rituals for yourself of like, okay, I close the computer and I go make dinner, and then after dinner I go do something else, or you go for a run, or exercise, whatever you choose to do. Just build a bit of a schedule and a structure for yourself around that. I personally like moving around, so I don't have a great division between my workspace and my living space, but that doesn't work for everybody. So yeah, I mean, Maria, you have a dedicated office.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely the opposite. Like, I need to have a physical like space. It's really hard for me to like focus. Like, I don't know, I feel this week I've been traveling and I'm doing some work and not at home, and it's been like insane, like people working on the sofas and stuff like that. I can't do that. So for me it's really easy because I feel like I'm leaving the office when I like close the door of that room and like go outside. I don't go back there until the next day. So that's the way I do it. Now that I've been traveling, I just like literally, like what I told Sonali, like I turn off my VPN. I need to connect to a VPN to be able to work on Nike stuff. So like I took some days off to work on other things because like I don't know why, but Sonali like inspires me to have more than one job. I don't necessarily recommend.
Not a good influence. Not a good influence.
No. So I just like turn off my VPN so that I can't, like, I separate things, like I'm not working on Nike things, I'm working on this. So like, bye, I turn it off. Those are some of my tips.
Yeah, I'm also currently work from home, and I have been work from home since I joined this company. So we're not looking to go back into the office anytime soon, unless it's for like larger workshops where you have to gather with like a larger team. And my space is also all mixed together. So one rule that I tend to have for myself is that, okay, if I decide that, we'll just go with the arbitrary 5 o'clock is the end of my workday, that laptop is getting shut and I am not going to do anything anymore unless it's like an emergency. And emergencies are like, someone's going to die if I don't do this, and not so much, oh, I'm going to be stressed out tomorrow. Because I think it's really important to really separate like your work-life balance, especially when you are in a work from home situation. And then that also includes not checking your emails, not checking your work messages. And so just keep that rule for yourself, and hopefully you'll be able to separate that. And people will come to understand Deborah signs off at 5 and I will not bother her, and they will come to me the next morning and then let me know about whatever's going on.
Yeah, advocate for yourself and hold those boundaries. Very, very important.
Awesome. Well, we have 3 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is stop the recording. And